Hello, my name is Brant Hunt. Today is the 23rd day of January 2023. I am actually, my Discerning What is True channel is on Facebook. That is, it's probably named under my name, Brant Hunt, BRANTHUNT. I also have an account with YouTube that they show the videos and also with Odyssey. I have researched some things this evening to find out. We're going to still read as part of the Committee of 300 by Dr. John Coleman. Um, what I found out is Dr. John Coleman apparently is still alive. He was born in 1935. He has written 12 editions, that is books, from 1992 till 2019 in English. Where I found this material is on WorldCat, information about libraries worldwide. Diplomacy by Deception is one of the books he's written, an account of the treacherous conduct by the governments of Britain and the United States. There have been 5 editions of that particular book from 1993 to 2013. The next book is What You Should Know About the United States Constitution and the British and the Bill of Rights, which has had 2, looks like it's been 2 editions, 1999 and 2008. He's written the book One World Order, The Socialist Dictatorship by John Coleman. And again, this has been 2 editions, 1998 and also 2008. The Club of Rome, which is also in German, looks like. He's done 3 editions with 3 different languages. As far as I can tell, is for sure is English for sure. It looks like there's German. I don't see any other language, but it says it's been done in 3 languages. Let's see. He's done a book called Sermons, Who Are the Conspirators? It's in English. This title comes from the Political Extremism and Radicalism Digital Archive series, which provides access to primary sources for academia, research, and teaching purposes. Please be aware that users may find some of the content within this resource to be offensive. The next book he's written is Beyond the Conspiracy, Unmasking the Invisible World Government. That is the Committee of 300, which will be what we're reading tonight. There have been 4 editions in that book. They have been written in 2007 and 2013 shows, but have been written in Japanese and English. And I have not seen this book, but this is a book he's also read, published, is Pearl Harbor and Beyond, An Account of Treachery and Treason by John Coleman. And this book is also written into 2010 and 11, and it was in Japanese and English. That's as far as I know at this point. So as far as I know, he is alive. 1935 is his birth year. It doesn't show anything more about that is his birth date, but he's done 74 works that have been in 127 publications and have been in 7 different languages. So I just thought this is from WorldCat Identities. Nothing really shares anything else more about him. Any kind of detail, which apparently he's also what's the word? He was apparently an MI6 agent, is what I understand. Also, this might be the reason why he worked at Tavistock, is what I'm gathering. So, but anyway, I just want to give you up to date that because there was a couple of people who asked me questions about that earlier. So let's go ahead and read this particular part of the book today, and we're going to start with page 165, 252 pages here, and this is from the Committee of 300, the Conspirators Hierarchy, the Committee of 300. So. Clay Shaw is a contract agent of the CIA, ran Permadex out of the trademark group that is in New Orleans. Former New Orleans District Attorney Jim Garrison came very close to cracking the Kennedy assassination plot up to the level of Clay Shaw until Garrison was dealt with and Shaw was found not guilty of involvement in the Kennedy assassination plot. The fact that Shaw was eliminated in the matter of Jack Ruby, another CIA contract agent, both died of induced quick-acting cancer, speaks volumes that Garrison was on the right track. Unfortunately, he passed. The Second Assassination Bureau is located in Switzerland and was until recently run by a shadowy figure of whom no photographs exist after 1941. The operations were and probably still are financed by the Oltramaire, Oltramaire family, a Swiss black nobility family, owners of the Lombard Odier Bank of Geneva. A committee of 300 operation. The primary contract man was Jacques Soustelle, this according to the U.S. Army G2 intelligence files. This group was also closely allied with Allen Dulles and Jean Deman, an important member of the Committee of 300 and a very prominent name in the oil industry in Texas. According to the Army, G2 records shows that the group was heavily involved in the arms trade in the Middle East. But more than that, the Assassination Bureau made no less than 30 attempts to assassinate General de Gaulle of France, in which Jacques Soustelle was directly involved. The same Soustelle was the contact man for the Sendero Lomonosio Shining Pathway guerrilla group protecting the committee Peruvian cocaine producers. When all the best that the Assassination Bureau could do had failed, thanks to the excellent work done by DGSE, the French intelligence, formerly SDECE, the job was assigned to the MI6 Military Intelligence Department 6, and also known as Secret Intelligence Service, SIS, under the code name of Jackal. The SDECE employed clever young graduates and was not infiltrated by the MI6 or the KGB to any measurable extent. Its record is tracking down foreign agents make it the envy of the Secret Service of every nation. And it was this group that followed Jackal on to his final destination and then killed him before he could fire on General de Gaulle's motorcade. It was the SDECE who undercover a Soviet mole in the cabinet of de Gaulle, who also happened to be a liaison man with the CIA in Langley. In order to discredit the SDECE, Allen Dulles, who hated de Gaulle, the feeling was mutual, had one of his agents, Robert Delode, caught with $12 million worth of heroin in his possession. After a great deal of expert interrogation, Delode confessed but was unable to say why he was smuggling drugs in the United States. The whole thing stank too high heaven of a setup. Based upon examination of SDECE methods in the protecting of de Gaulle, especially in motorcades, the FBI, Secret Service, and the CIA knew exactly how to strip President Kennedy of his security and make it easy for the three Perminex shooters to murder him in Delier's Plaza in November 1963. Another example of fact disguised as fiction is the Leon Uris, U-R-I-S novel Topaz, T-O-P-A-Z. In Topaz, we find a factual account of the activities of Thyrod, that's T-H-Y-R-A-U-D, Devoscudoli, the very KGB agent uncovered by the SDECE and denounced as a KGB liaison man with the CIA. There are many fictionalized accounts of the Mosaic activities, nearly all of which are based on fact. Mosaic is also known as the Institute. Many would-be writers make nonsensical statements about it, especially one writer who is much in favor with the Christian right wing, which is accepted as true. One can pardon the offender because he has no intelligent training, but that does not stop him from dropping Mosaic names all over the place. Such disinformation exercises are routinely run against American right-wing patriotic groups. Originally, the Mosaic consisted of three groups: the Bureau of Military Intelligence, the Political Department of the Foreign Offices, and the Department of Security. David Ben Gurion, a member of the Committee of 300, received some considerable help from MI6 in putting it together. You see, there's certain groups here are being allowed to get the information that is from MI6, if you'll follow what I'm saying here. But it was not a success, and in 1951, Sir William Stevenson of MI6 restructured it into a single unit as an arm of the political department of the Israeli Foreign Office, with a special operation group for espionage and black job operations. British intelligence gave further assistance in training and equipping for the servicing of the Serie Matag, M-A-K-T-A-L, also known as the General Staff Renaissance Reconnaissance Unit, in the format of British Special Air Service. This service unit of the Mosaic is never mentioned by name and is known simply as the Guys. The Guys are merely an extension of British intelligence SAS unit who continually train and update them in new methods. It was the Guys who killed the leaders of the PLO and kidnapped Adolf Eichmann. The Guys, and indeed all Mosaic agents, operate on a wartime footing. The Mosaic has a tremendous advantage over other intelligence services in that every country in the world has a large Jewish community. By studying social and criminal records, the Mosaic is able to pick agents among local Jews if it can have a holdover and make them work for it without pay. The Mosaic also has the advantage of having access to the records of all U.S. law enforcement agencies and U.S. intelligence services. The Office of Naval Intelligence, that is, serves the Mosaic at no cost to Israel. Citizens of the United States would be shocked and angered and dismayed if ever it was discovered just how much the Mosaic knows about the lives of millions of Americans in every walk of life, even those who are not political in any way. The first head of the Mosaic is Reuben Shinlog, who was made a member of the Committee of 300, but it is not known whether his successor enjoyed the same privileges. Chances are that he does. The Mosaic has skillful disinformation services. The amount of disinformation it feeds to the American market is embarrassing, but even more embarrassing is how it is swallowed, hook, line, and sinker, and all. What we are actually witnessing in the microcosm of the Mosaic is the extent of control exercised by the Olympians over the intelligence services, entertainment, publishing, opinion making, that is the polls, and the television news media on a global scale. Ted Turner was recently given a seat on the Committee of 300 in recognition for his news making CNN broadcasts. The committee has the power and the means to tell the people of this world anything, and it will be believed by the vast majority. On every occasion that a researcher happens upon this astounding central control group, he's either successful bought off, or else he undergoes some specialty training at the Tavistock Institute, after which he becomes a contributor to more fiction of the James Bond type, that is, i.e., he is derailed and well rewarded. If such a person as John F. Kennedy should stumble onto the truth about who directs world events and cannot be bought, he is assassinated. In the case of John F. Kennedy, the assassination was carried out with great attended publicity and with the utmost brutality to serve as a warning to world leaders not to get out of line. Pope John Paul I was quietly murdered because he was getting close to the Committee of 300 through Freemasons in the Vatican hierarchy. His successor, Pope John Paul II, was publicly humiliated as a warning to cease and desist, which he has done. As we shall see, certain Vatican leaders are today seated on the Committee of 300. It is easy to put serious researchers off track of the Committee of 300 because Britain MI6 promotes a wide variety of kooky, such as the New Age, that is Yogism, Zen Buddhism, witchcraft, Delphi priesthood of Apollo, that's Aristotle was a member, and hundreds of small cults of all kinds, a group of retired British intelligence agents who stay on the track labeled the conspiracy hierarchy, called Force X, and declared that it possesses a super intelligence service that has corrupted the KGB, the Vatican intelligence, the CIA, the ONI, the GGSE, U.S. military intelligence, the State Department Intelligence Service, and even the most secret of the U.S. intelligence agency, the Office of National Reconnaissance. The existence of the National Reconnaissance Office was known to only a handful of people outside of the Committee of 300, until Truman stumbled upon it quite by accident. Churchill had a hand in setting up the NRO, and he was reportedly livid when Truman discovered its existence. This is Churchill is a bad rat, folks. Really is. Churchill, more than any other servant of the Committee of 300, considered Truman his little man from independence without independence at all. This referred to Truman every move being controlled by the Freemasons. Even today, the NRO annual budget is not known to the Congress of the United States and is responsible to only a select few of Congress, but it is a creature of the Committee of 300. The committee reports are routinely sent every few hours. Thus, fictionalized spoofs one sees about the various branches and arms of control of the committee were designed to take suspicion away from the real thing. But we should never doubt that the real thing does indeed exist. Take another example of what I mean. The book The Day of the Jackal, from which a highly successful movie was created. The events relayed in the books are factual, although for obvious reasons the names of some of the players and the locales were changed. But the thrust of the story, that a single MI6 operative was assigned to get rid of General Charles de Gaulle, is absolutely correct. General de Gaulle had become unmanageable, refusing to cooperate with the committee, whose existence he knew very well since he had been invited to join it. Came to a climax when de Gaulle withdrew France from NATO and immediately began building his own nuclear force, the so-called Force de Frappe. This so angered the committee that de Gaulle's assassination was ordered. But the French Secret Intelligence Service was able to intercept Jackal's plan and keep de Gaulle safe. In the light of the record of MI6, which I might add is the Committee of 300 main resources when it comes to intelligence, the work done by French intelligence borders on the miraculous. The military intelligence department 6 dates back to Sir Francis Walsingham, paymaster of Queen Elizabeth I for dirty tricks operation. This has been going on for hundreds of years, folks. This is amazing. Over hundreds of years, the MI6 has established a record with no other intelligence agent can come near to duplicating. The MI6 agents have gathered information from the four corners of the earth and have carried out their secret operations that would astound even the most knowledgeable if ever they were to be made public, which is why it rates as the master service of the Committee of 300. Officially, MI6 does not exist. Its budget comes out of the Queen's purse and private funds and is reported to be in range of $350 to $500 million per annum. But no one knows for sure what the exact amount is. In its present form, MI6 dates back to 1911, when it was under the leadership of Sir Mansfield Cummings, a captain of the Royal Navy, who was always identified by the letter C, from which M of James Bond fame is taken. No official record of MI6 failure and success exists. It is that secret, although the Burgess McLean Blake Blunt disaster did great damage to the morale of MI6 officers. Unlike other services, future members are recruited from universities and other areas of learning by highly skilled talent scouts, as we saw in the case of Rhodes Scholars inducted into the round table. One of the requirements is the ability to speak foreign languages. Candidates undergo a rigorous bloodying. With the backing of such a formidable force, the Committee of 300 has little fear from ever being exposed. And this will go on for decades. What makes the committee incredible is the incredible secrecy that prevails. None of the news media has ever made mention of the conspiratorial hierarchy. Therefore, as is to be expected, people doubt its existence. The Committee of 300 is for the most part under the control of the British monarch. In this case, Queen Elizabeth II. Queen Victoria is believed to have been quite paranoid about keeping it secret and went to great lengths to cover the Masonic writings left at the scene of Jack the Ripper murders, which alluded to the Committee of 300 connections with experiments carried out by a family member who was also a highly placed member of the Scottish Rite Freemasonry. The Committee of 300 is filled with members of British aristocrats, which has corporate interests and associates in every country of the world, including the USSR. The committee structure is as follows. The Tavistock Institute at Sussex University and London sites is owned and controlled by the Royal Institute for International Affairs, whose Hojoken is in America is Henry Kissinger. Eagle Star Group, which changed its name to Star Group after the close of the Second World War, is composed of a group of major international companies involving in overlapping and interface areas such as insurance, banking, real estate, entertainment, high tech, including cybernetics, electronic communication, etc. Banking, while not the mainstay, is vitally important, especially in the areas where banks act as a clearinghouse and money laundering of drug money. The main big name banks are the Bank of England, the Federal Reserve Bank, Bank of International Settlements, the World Bank, and the Hong Kong and Shanghai banks. American Express Bank is a means of recycling drug dollars. Each of these banks is affiliated with or controls hundreds of thousands of large and small banks throughout the world. Banks large and small in the thousands are in the Committee of 300 network, including Banco Commerciale d'Italia, Banco. I'm not going to go all these banks. There's a ton of them here. Since it handles flight capital investments to and from the United States, primarily in dollars and U.S. bonds, located and isolated in neutral Lugano, the flight capital center for the Venetian black nobility. Lugano is not in Italy or in Switzerland, and is kind of a twilight zone for shady flight captains' capital operations. George Ball, who owns a large block of stock of BSI, is a prominent insider in the Hacks U.S. representatives. I'm not going to go again into this. It's all these banks here. We won't go into that part because there are plenty of them. The Oppenheimers of South Africa are much bigger heavyweights than the Rockefellers. For instance, in 1981, Harry Oppenheimer, chairman of the giant Anglo-American corporation that controls gold and diamond mining, sales and distribution in the world, stated that he was about to launch into the North American banking market. Oppenheimer promptly invested $10 billion in a specially created vehicle for the purpose of buying into the big banks in the U.S., among which was Citicorp. Oppenheimer's investment vehicle was called Minorco, which set up a shop in Bermuda, a British royal family preserve. On the board of Morocco was to be found Walter Wriston, W-R-I-S-T-O-N, of Citicorp, and Robert Clare, its chief counsel. The only other company to rival Oppenheimer in the field of precious metals and minerals was Consolidated Gold Fields of South Africa, but Oppenheimer took control of it with a 28% stake, the largest single stockholder. Thus, golds, diamonds, platinum, titanium, tantalite, copper, iron ore, uranium, and 52 other metals and minerals, many of them of absolutely vital strategic value to the United States, passed into the hands of the Committee of 300. Thus was the vision of one of the earlier South African members of the Committee of 300, Cecil John Rhodes, fully realized the vision which started with the spilling of the blood of thousands upon thousands of white farmers and their families in South Africa, whom history records as the Boers, B-O-E-R-S. While the United States stood by with folded hands as did the rest of the world, this small nation was subjected to the most vicious war of genocide in history. The United States will be subject to the same treatment by the Committee of 300 when our turn comes, and it will not be long in coming, folks. Insurance companies play a key role in the business of Committee of 300. Among them are the found such as the top insurance companies are ones in Venice, and the largest, second largest company is such in the world who keep their bank accounts at Bank of International Settlements in Swiss gold francs. Both control a multiplicity of investment banks whose turnover in stocks on Wall Street double that of U.S. investors. Prominent on the board of these two insurance giants are Committee of 300 members. The Giustiniani family, the black nobility of Rome and Venice who traced their lineage to the Emperor Justinian, Sir Joshua Hambro of Hambros, that is the merchant bank, Pier Pedro Luzzasio Fucius, whose lineage dates back 6 centuries to the most ancient Lazarios, the black nobility of Venice, and the Umberto Ottolandia of the ancient black nobility family of the same name. Other old Venetian black nobility committees of 300 members and board members of the ASG and RAS are the Doria, D-O-R-I-A family, the finances of the Spanish Habsburgs, Elliot D. Rothschild of the French Rothschild family, Baron August von Flick, the second richest man in Germany, is now deceased, though, Franco Arsenio Bonacaski of the ancient Orsino black nobility that traces its lineage to the ancient Roman senator of the same name, the Abba family, whose lineage dates back to the great Duke of Abba, and Baron Pierre Lambert, a cousin of the Belgian Rothschild family. The English companies controlled by the British royal family are English Star, Prudential Assurance Company, the Prudential Insurance Company, which owns and controls most American insurers, including Allstate. I didn't even know that, folks. At the head of this list is Eagle Star, probably the most powerful front for Military Intelligence Department 6, that is MI6. Eagle Star, although nowhere near as large as Scurizio Generale, is perhaps equally important simply because it is owned by members of the Queen of England's family and as head of the Committee of 300, Eagle Star makes a tremendous impact. Eagle Star is more than a major front of MI6. It's also a front for major British banks, including Hill Samuels, N.M. Rothschild and Son, one of the gold price fixers who meet daily in London, and Barclays Bank, one of the funders of the African National Congress. It can be said with a great degree of accuracy that the most powerful British oligarchy families create Eagle Star as a vehicle for black operations against those who oppose Committee of 300 policies. Unlike the CIA, British law makes it serious crimes to name MI6 officials, so the following is but a partial list of the top brass of MI6 who are or were also members of the Committee of 300. We're not going to go into these guys here. Just another group of long names here. All of the foregoing are or were heavily involved in key committees of 300 companies, which interface with literally thousands of companies engaged in every branch of commercial activity, as we shall see. Some of these companies include Rank Corporation, Xerox, ITT, IBM, RCA, CBS, NBC, BBC, and CBC in communications, Raytheon, Textron, Bendix, Atlantic Richfield, British Petroleum, Royal Dutch Shell, Marine Midland Bank, Lehman Brothers, Kumlo, General Electric, Westinghouse, United Fruit Company, and I guess, and a great many more. MI6 ran a large number of these companies to British intelligence station in RCA's building in New York, which was the headquarters of its chief officer, Sir William Stephenson. Radio Corporation of America was formed by GE, Westinghouse, Morgan Guarantee and Trust, acting for the British Crown, and United Fruit back in 1919 as a British intelligence center. RCA's first president was J.P. Morgan's Owen Young, after whom the Young Plan was named. In 1929, David Sarnoff was appointed to run RCA. Sarnoff had acted as assistant to Young at the 1990 Paris Peace Conference, where a fallen Germany was stabbed in the back by the victorious Allies. A network of Wall Street banks and brokerages house takes care of the stock market for the committee. Prominent among them are Blythe, Eastman Dildon, the Morgan Group, Lazar Ferrez, and Kumlo Rhodes. Nothing happens on Wall Street that is not controlled by the Bank of England. Hear that? Say that again. Nothing happens on Wall Street that is not controlled by the Bank of England, whose instructions are relayed through the Morgan Group and then put into action through key brokerage houses whose top executives are ultimately responsible for carrying out committee directives, or overstep the limit laid down by Morgan Guarantee. Drexel Burnham Landberg was a favorite of the Committee of 300. In 1981, almost every major broker's house on Wall Street had sold out to the committee. Philibro merger with Salmon Brothers. Philibro is a business arm of Oppenheimer's of the Anglo-American Corporation. By this control mechanism, the Committee of 300 ensures that its members and their far-flung business corporations turn their investments on Wall Street over at a rate of double that of the non-insider foreign investors. Okay, let's continue. Remember, some of the richest families in the world live in Europe, so it is natural that they should have a preponderance of members on the committee. The von Thurns and the Taxis family, who once owned the German postal franchise, made David Rockefeller look like a very poor relation. The von Thurns and the Taxis dynasty dates back 300 years, and generation after generation of family members have had seats on the committee, which they occupy to this day. We have already mentioned by name many of the most wealthy Venetian black nobility members of the Committee of 300, and other names will be added as we come across them in their various fields of endeavor. Now we shall include some American members of the Committee of 300 and try to trace their affiliation and connections to the British Crown. How can these facts be verified? Actually, some of them cannot be verified because the information comes straight out of the intelligence file, but with a lot of legwork. There are many sources which can verify at least part of the facts. The work would involve a diligent search of Dun and Bradstreet reference book of corporations and Standard & Poor's and British and Americans Who's Who, with long hours, hard work, and cross-referencing names with their corporate affiliations. The Committee of 300 corporations, banks, and insurance companies operate under the unified command covering every conceivable matter of strategy and cohesive action. The committee is the only organized power hierarchy in the world, transcending all governments and individuals, however powerful and secure they may feel themselves to be, that cover finance, defense matters, and political parties of all colors and types. There is no entity the committee cannot reach and control, and that includes organized religions of the world. This then is the all-powerful Olympian group, whose power base is in London at the City of London financial centers, with its grip on minerals, metals, precious gems, cocaine, opium, pharmaceutical drugs, rentier and financial bankers, cult promoters, and founders of rock music. The British Crown is the control point from which all things radiate. As this saying goes, they have a finger in every pie. It is obvious that the communications field is tightly controlled. Going back to RCA, we find that its directorial is composed of British American established figures who featured prominently in other organizations such as the CFR, NATO, the Club of Rome, the Trilateral Commission, Freemasonry, Skull and Bones, Bilderbergers, Round Table, Milner Society, and the Jesuit Aristotle Society. Among them was David Sarnoff, who moved to London at the same time Sir William Stephenson moved into the RCA building in New York. All three major networks, television networks, came as a spinoff from RCA, especially the National Broadcasting Company, which was first, closely followed by the American Broadcasting Company, that is ABC, in 1951. The third big television network was Columbia Broadcasting System, which, like its sister companies, was and still is dominated by British intelligence. William Paley, P-A-L-E-Y, was trained in mass brainwashing techniques at Tavistock Institute prior to being passed as qualified to head CBS. So these people here, all these people, even at the top here, he's saying they've been trained, how to brainwash people in television. Thus, if we, the people of the United States, but knew it, all our major television networks are subject to British oversight, and information they provide first goes to London for clearance. It's interesting to note that Tavistock intelligence papers written by Stanford Research Institute, commonly named the Aquarian Conspiracy, was funded by donations from all three major television networks. All three major networks are represented on the Committee of 300 and are affiliated with the giants of the mass communication business, companies such as Xerox Corporation of Rochester, New York, whose Robert M. Beck holds a seat on the committee. Beck is also a director of Prudential Life Insurance Company, which is a subsidiary, which is a subsidiary of the London Prudential Assurance Company Limited. These insurance companies are a racket, folks. God. Orders on the board of Xerox are Howard Clark of the American Express Company, one of the main conduits for moving drug money through traveler's checks, former Secretary of Treasury William Simon, and Saul Lewitsky, who negotiated the Panama Canal treaties for the committee. Lewitz is important to the committee by virtue of the long-standing expertise in laundering drug money through the Marine, Midland, and the Hong Kong and Shanghai banks. Another Xerox board member is Robert Sproud. He is of a real interest because, as president of the University of Rochester, he allowed Tavistock Institution, working through the CIA, to use the university facility for 20 years for the MK Ultra LSD experiments. Some other 85 universities in the United States also allowed their facilities to be misused in this manner. A giant size as Xerox is dwarfed by the Rank organization, a London-based conglomerate fully controlled by members of the Queen Elizabeth immediate family. Notable members of the board of Rank organization who are also members of the Committee of 300 are the following: Lord Helsby, chairman of the Drug Money Clearinghouse, Midland Bank. Helsby, other positions included directorship in the giant Imperial Group and the Industrial and Commercial Finance Corporation. Sir Anto France, a director of Tube Investments who runs the London Underground train service. France is also a director of the Bank of England, which has so much control over the reserve banks, Federal Reserve banks here in America. Sir Dennis Mountain, chairman of the majority of Eagle Star Group and director of English Property Corporation, one of the rentier financial corporations or companies of the British Royal Company. One such member is the Honorable Agnes Olivier, Prince of Companies, who is married to Her Royal Highness Prince Alexandria, sister of the Duke of Kent, leader of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry, and who takes the place of the Queen when she is outside of Britain. Olivier is a director of the Bank of England and chairman of the giant I'm just going to spell it to you, LONRHO conglomerate. It was Laurent that ended the rule of Ian Smith in Rhodesia so that he could be replaced by Robert Mugabe. Wow. Holy cow. At stake was Rhodesia's chrome mines, which produced the finest high-grade chrome ore in the world. That is correct, folks. That is a complete correct. That's why chrome is no longer on cars anymore. The Rhodesia was that part of it, and that was in 1975 when the war started there. They set up, put Robert Mugabe in place for this. This is unbelievable. So that's why you don't have chrome ever. You used to have chrome in your cars in the 70s outside. Go some older cars and look at chrome in the 60s and 70s. But by the 80s, so it began to change because it became expensive. There was only two places in the world I knew of. That was in the Soviet Union that had some kind of chrome, and it was also in this area where Rhodesia, which is now Zimbabwe. Cyril Hamilton, chairman of the Standard and Chartered Bank, the old Lord Milner Cecil Rhodes Bank, and a board member of the Bank of Bank of England. Hamilton is also on the board of the Xerox Corporation, the Malta International Banking Corporation, a Knight of Malta Bank, a director of the Standard Bank of South Africa, the largest bank in that country, by the way, and a director of the Banque d'Afrique, which would be French. Lorna Bryant of Lotheby's, past president of British Bankers Association, director of Morgan Greenfield, a powerful bank, director of Prudential Assurance, director of J.P. Morgan, director of the Bank of England, a board member of the Bank of International Settlements, and a director of Giant Unilever conglomerate. And Unilever is, yes, they own quite a few companies. It's a conglomerate. One was to do with soap, but there are other companies also. Sir Reedy Geddes, chairman of the giant Dunlop and Pirelli tire companies. Yes, I think Dunlop, is British, but don't hold me on. Pirelli is an Italian company. Director of Midland and International Banks, director of the Bank of England. Note how many of these powerful men are directors of the Bank of England, which makes control of American fiscal policies very simple. Many of these organizations, institutions, companies, and banks are so interfaced and interlocked as to make it as almost impossible task to sort them out. On RCA's board sits Thornton Bradshaw, president of Atlantic Richfield. Atlantic Richfield is an oil company. He's also a member of NATO. He's also a member of the World Wildlife Fund. He's also a member of the Club of Rome. He's also a member of the Aspen Institution for Humanist Studies, the Council of Foreign Relations. Bradshaw is also chairman of NBC. The most important function of RCA remains his service to British intelligence. It is not generally known how powerful was the role played by the Committee of 300 in stopping the investigation into the CIA, which Senator McCarthy almost succeeded in pulling off. Had McCarthy been successful, it's very likely that President John F. Kennedy would be alive today. When McCarthy said he was going to summon William Bundy to appear before his commission in equity, panic swept Washington and London. Bundy had been called to testify, would most probably had cracked and opened the door to the special relations that existed between British oligarchy circles and the circles and their cousins in the United States government. Such a possibility could not be entertained. The Royal Institute of International Affairs was called in to put an end to McCarthy. The RII chose Alan Dulles, a man who was totally enamored of decadent British society, to attack McCarthy head on. Dulles put Patrick Lyman and Richard Helms in charge of the McCarthy case. Helms was later rewarded for his service against McCarthy by being made head of the CIA. General Mark Clark, a member of the CFR and well-liked military man in London circles, was appointed by General Eisenhower to turn back McCarthy's full-fledged attack on the CIA. McCarthy was preempted when Clark announced that a special committee was to be appointed to examine the agency. Clark, on instruction from the RIIA, recommended a congressional watchdog committee to periodically examine the work of government intelligence agencies. The whole thing was a super tragedy for America, though, and a victory for the British, who feared that McCarthy would accidentally stumble onto the Committee of 300 and its control over every aspect of United States affairs. The Lehman brothers, cum laude, former chairman Peter G. Peterson, served under former MI6 chief Sir William Wiseman, and as such was no stranger to British royalty. Peterson is tied to an Aspen Institute, yet another arm of British intelligence. John R. Petty is the president and chairman of the Marine Midland Bank, a bank whose drug trade connections have been well established long before it was taken over by the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. Probably the #1 bank in the opium trade, a position it has held since 1814. Let's continue here. But the best proof I can offer of the existence of the Committee of 300 is the Rank Corporations, RANK, which is in conjunction with the Eagle Star, is the British Crown. It's also the Black Operation Center of the MI6. Between them, these two Committee of 300 companies control Her Majesty's Dominion of Canada, using the Hofjuman-Bruckmann family to carry out their orders. Trizell, TRIZEC Holdings, ostensibly owned by the Bronfman family, is reality the main assets of the Queen of England in Canada. The entire Southeastern Asian opium trade interfaces with the Bronfman Empire is one of the means whereby heroin is brought to America. In a sense, Canada is like Switzerland, pristine snow-covered landscapes, big cities, a place of great beauty, but underneath lies a deep layer of filth and dirt arising from its massive heroin trade. The Brockman family are cutouts, what is known in MI6's frontmen, controlled from London by MI6 desk men. Edgar Brockman, the family leader, was sent to Moscow, center cover name for KGB headquarters at 2, I'm going to spell it for you, DZERZHINSKY Square, Moscow, on a large number of occasions. As a low level, Brockman was probably very useful as contact man with Moscow. Brockman was never at any stage a contact or contract agent for MI6, so never carried the title of paroles, a key intelligent word for mutual identification between agents, which greatly disappointed the eager Brockman family head. At one stage, when it was thought that some of the family were acting suspiciously, watchers, intelligent jargon for intelligence officer keeping persons under surveillance were put on the Brockman family, but found only that one of the Brockmans had been bragging to the United States cousin, the word MI6 used for the CIA, who was unaware of the role of Edgar Brockman. This was quickly corrected. Two Eagle Star directors, who were also the two top MI6 operators, took control of the Brockman family about 6 months after the war ended. Sir Kenneth Keith and Sir Kenneth Strong, whom we have already met, legitimized the Brockman family by setting up the Trizell, TRIZEC Holdings. There is no one in the world who can do a better job of fronting through companies than MI6. Yet, like Switzerland, there is a dirty side to Canada that has been well hidden from view by the Committee of 300 on the cover of the Official Secrets Act, a carbon copy of the British law passed in 1913. Drugs, dirty money laundering, crime, and racketeering are all covered by their infamous act. Not known to many is that it changed under the Official Secrets Act, which can be interpreted any way the Crown agents choose. Persons could face the death penalty. As I've said so many times since 1980, Canada is not a nation like South Africa or Holland or Belgium. It always was and remains tied to the Queen of England apron strings. Canada, we find, is always first in carrying out Queen Elizabeth's wishes. Canadian troops have fought in every one of Her Majesty's wars, including the Boer War from 1899 to 1903. Like its American counterpart, the Canadian Institute of International Affairs is a child of the Royal Institute for International Affairs. and runs Canada's politics. Its members have filled the position of Secretary of State ever since it was founded in 1925. So we think the base of the CFR is bad here in the United States. They've actually been doing this just as long. The Institute for Pacific Relations, the body that fosters the attack on Pearl Harbor, was welcome in Canada after Owen Lattimore and his fellow members had their treacherous activities exposed in 1947 and left the United States before they could be charged. Canadian Institute for International Affairs is connected with the RAND Corporation through Sir Kenneth Strong, who was second in charge of MI6 at the end of the Second World War. As a member of the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, Strong is the #2 man in Canada for rank and the British Crown commercial interests. He's on the board of one of the most prolific drug banks in the world after the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, the Bank of Nova Scotia, through which proceeds of the Canadian heroin trade are handled. First in line is Sir Brian Edward Mountain, the ranking member of the Knights of Order of St. John of Jerusalem. It is well to remember that when the British Crown wanted the United States to enter the Second World War, it sent Lord Beaverbrook and Sir Brian Mountain to meet with President Roosevelt to deliver the Crown's order in this regard. Roosevelt complied by ordering the United States Navy to operate out of the base in Greenland, which attacks on German submarines were carried out 9 months before Pearl Harbor. This was done without the knowledge and consent of the Congress. It's also done without even telling anybody, folks. So you see, before the war, before even the United States gets involved in a war with Japan, that's an attack Pearl Harbor. That was 9 months. So we're talking about this took place, I think it's December 7th, 1941. Is that correct? I think that's the correct date. And so they were already doing something 9 months already, attacking German submarines when we had never even declared war with Germany, and Germany never even attacked the United States. You see? Another big name in the rank Canadian interfacing was Sir Kenneth Keith, Director of Canadian equivalent of the Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank, the Bank of Nova Scotia, dripping in drug money laundering. He was also on the board of British oldest and most venerable newspaper institution, the London Times, the Sunday Times. For over 100 years, the Times has been the Crown's voice on foreign affairs, financial matters, and political life in England. Like so many committee of 300 members, Sir Kenneth circulated between the MI6 and the opium supply chain of command in Hong Kong and China, ostensibly on business for the Canadian Institute for International Affairs, in which he was a member furthermore, as a director of the Hill Samuel Banking House, his presence in China and Hong Kong could be explained without any problem. One of his closest associates outside of MI6 circles was Sir Philip Zuleta, Z-U-L-E-T-A, Committee of 300 Director Comptroller of all British Prime Ministers, both Conservative and Labour. Sir Kenneth Strong tied in all the spokes of the drug wheel, including terrorism, production of opium, the gold market, the dirty money laundering, and the banking to its central core, the British Crown. At the top of British Crown control of Canada was Walter Gordon, a former member of the Queen's Hands-on Oversight Committee, also known as the Privy Council. Gordon sponsored the Institute for Pacific Relations via the Canadian Institute of International Affairs. As a former Minister of Finance, Gordon was able to place Committee of 300 selected accountants and lawyers inside the three main charter banks, that is the Bank of Nova Scotia, the Canadian Imperial Bank, and the Toronto Dominion Bank. Through these three Crown banks, a network of Committee of 300 agents responsible to Gordon's oversight, the world's second largest dirty drug money laundering operation with a direct open door to China. Before his death, Gordon controlled James Endicott, Chester Ronigan, and Paul Lynn, identified by MI6 as Canada's top Chinese specialists. All three men worked closely with Chow En-lay, who once told Gamal Abdul Nasser that he would do to Britain and the U.S. what they had done to China, i.e., turned them into nations of heroin addicts. Chow En-lay made good on his promise, starting with American GIs in Vietnam. Other close collaborators in Canadian heroin drug ring were John D. Gilmer and John Robert Nicholson, both members of the Order of the Knights of St. John of Jerusalem. Lord Hartley Shaw Cross, who is believed to report directly to Queen Elizabeth II, was on the board of the Royal Institute for International Affairs and Chancellor of Sussex University, where the notorious Tavistock Institute for Human Relations is located, with extension connections in Canada. As part of the rank United States operation, no other single company had been more successful for rank than the Corning Group, a CRNING Group, owners of Metropolitan Life Insurance Company, the New York Life Insurance Company. Committee of 300 members were Amory Holton and his brother James Holton, have long served the British Crown through the above-named insurance companies, and also Corning Glass, Dow Corning, and Corning International. You know, Corning Glass is the ones who make this glass cookware. Dow Corning, I don't know if they're still in business or not. They were similar to some of the products they made similar were to Owens Corning fiberglass. I don't know if they do that anymore neither. And Corning's International, both sit on the boards of IBM and Citicorp. James Hogan is a director of Princeton Institute for Advanced Studies, a director of J. Pierpont Morgan Library, a stronghold of the RIIA and CFR, and he's also director of CBS. It was the Hogan brother who donated hundreds of acres known as the Y Plantation, WYE, plant in Maryland to the British Crown Aspen Institute. Also on the Corning Glass board sits the Bishop of the Archdiocese of the Anglican, as the Episcopalian Church of Boston. All this gives the group its much vaunted air of respectability, which insurance companies executives must carry, as we shall see. In addition to James Hogan, Keith Funston, and John Harper, both on Corning's board, run the Metropolitan Life Insurance Company. Massive gridding and interface of just this one single unit committee of 300 will give us a good indication of the vast power of the disposal of the conspiracy hierarchy before which all knees are bowed, including the knee of the President of the United States, whomever that happens to be. What is important to note is how the American company, one of hundreds, is interfaced with British intelligence with Canada, the Far East, and South Africa, not to mention its grilling of corporate officials and directors, reaching into every aspect of business and politics in the United States. I'll take a break here with some water. While Metropolitan Life Insurance Company does not begin to compare with the Committee of 300 giant, Asirio General is nevertheless a good indication of how the Hogan's power extends right across the business spectrum of the U.S. and Canada. Starting with R.H. Macy, whose floor walkers no longer wear red carnations to honor the company's affiliation with communism, the Royal Bank of Canada, the National and Westminster Bank, Intertel, INTERTEL, a private intelligence agency, the own Canadian Pacific Railroad, the Reader's Digest, the RCA, ATT, the Harvard Business School, the W.R. Grace Shipping Company, Ralston Perina Company, U.S. Steel, Irving Trust, Consolidated Edison of New York, and ABC. The Hogan's power grid extends as far as Hong Kong and Shanghai Bank. I don't mean they own them, they're a part of it. They run it somewhat. They don't own it, but they may own it also. Another successful rang company in the United States is Reliance Insurance Group. As an integral part of the Strategic Bombing Survey, Reliance established the initial structural base for brainwashing, opinion making, polling, survey, and the system analysis used by Tavistock Institute in the United States. The Reliance Insurance Company, based in Philadelphia, set up the corporate structure which enabled the Strategic Bombing Survey to be turned against the people of the United States, who, although unaware of it, have been subject to a savage psychological warfare for the past 45 years. A key operative in this assault on the United States was David Bialkin, B-I-A-L-K-I-N, of the Committee of 300 law firm Wilkett, Farr, and Gallagher. Bialkin ran the Anti-Defamation League, the ADL, for many years. The ADL is a British intelligence operation founded in the MUS by MI6 and run by Saul Steinberg and Eric Trist of Tavistock. Saul Steinberg is the U.S. representative and business partner of the Jacob D. Rockefeller Child family of London. Wow. Reliance Corporation is home for Carl Linter, who succeeded Eli Black when he fell from a 44th floor window of a New York skyscraper. Reliance Company interfaces with the powerful United Fruit Company of Boston, and which is now called Chiquita, and New Orleans, run by the Max Bisber, who before he sheep dipped was a well-known Detroit underworld figure. Sheep dipped, what that means. United Fruit Company has long been a conveyor of heroin and cocaine in the U.S. under the expertise of Ms. Balium Rickeys, RIKLIS, a rapid American corporation who masterminds shipments from Canada to U.S. Remember, all this is under the aegis of a single company, folks. Grilling and interfacing with a mirage of small companies that operate to give the Committee of 300 full control of the multiplicity of operations, each one carefully interlocked in the grid. Reliance Group is a spinoff of the parent company whose function is to brainwash the American people through a network of pollsters, opinion makers, and relies on operation research for direct links with Tavistock Institute. Another associated company is Leasco, Leasco, which is closely interfaced with AT&T. Disclosure Incorporation, Western Union International, Imbucon, that's IMBUCON Limited, and Yankovic, Skelly, and White. Daniel Yankovic is the emperor of the polling opinion-making corporate structure in the United States, a vast apparatus which provides public opinion on social, economic, and political matters of substance. To quote Edward Bernays, it was this vast apparatus that turns the majority of Americans who had never even heard of Saddam Hussein and vaguely knew that Iraq was a country somewhere in the Middle East to a people howling for his blood and the extermination of Iraq as a nation. Yankovic utilized to the full all knowledge gained during the Second World War as a second-generation warrior. Yankovic has no equal, which is why ABC polls conducted by his company are always in the forefront of public opinion. The population of the United States was targeted the same manner of German worker houses by attacking the sense of reality. This technique is, of course, standard training for certain intelligence groups, which includes the CIA. Yankovic's task was to destroy traditional American values and replace them with new age of Aquarius values. As the Committee of 300 most senior public opinion makers, no one can doubt that Yankovic has done a superior job. Yeah, I'm approaching about an hour here, so I'm going to probably have to stop. Probably the best way to explain what methods are used and what results are expected to be achieved is to quote John Nasbuk, NAISBITTT work as explained in the Trend Report. Nasbuk has acted as advisor to Lyndon Johnson, Eastman Kodak, IBM, American Express, Center for Policy Studies, Chase Manhattan, General Motors, Lewis Harris Polls, the White House, Institute of Life Insurance, the American Red Cross, Mobil Oil, BP, and a host of other 300 companies and institutions. This methodology derived from MI6 Tavistock procedures is, of course, not unique. I will briefly outline a methodology in developing trend reports for our client. We rely mostly on a system of monitoring local events and behavior. We are overwhelmingly impressed with the extent to which this is a bottom-up society, so we monitor what is going on locally rather than what is going on in Washington, New York. You know, things start in Los Angeles, Tampa, Hartford, Wichita, Portland, San Diego, Denver. It's very much from the bottom-up society, though. The tracking concept employed in determining these trends has its roots in World War II. During the war, intelligence experts sought to find a method for obtaining information on enemy nations that public opinion polls would normally have provided. Under the leadership of Paul Lazarsfeld and Harold Laswell, a method was developed for monitoring what was going on these sites that involved doing a content analysis of the daily press. Although this method of monitoring public thinking continues to be the choice of intelligence committee, the nation's annual spends millions of dollars doing newspaper content analysis in all parts of the world. The reason this system of monitoring changes in society works so well is that news holes in newspapers is a closed system. For economic reasons, the amount of space devoted to news as a newspaper doesn't change over time. So when something new is introduced into that news hole, something of a combination of things has to go out to be omitted. The principle involved here is classified as a forced choice within a closed system. In this forced situation, societies and new preoccupations and forget old ones. You keep track of the ones that are added and the ones that are given up. Eventually, societies are like human beings. I do not know what the number is, but a person can only keep so many problems and concerns in his head at any one time. If new problems or concerns are added, some existing ones must be given up. We keep track of what Americans have given up and have taken up. The United States is rapidly shifting from a mass industrial society to an information society, and the final impact will be more profound than the 19th century shift from agricultural to an industrial society. Starting in 1979, the number one occupation in the U.S. became clerking, C-L-E-R-K-I-N-G, replacing laborer and farmer. And this latter statement is a brief history of the United States. It is not by chance that Nasbit is a member of the Club of Rome and is such a senior staffer of the Committee of 300. He is also one of the senior vice president of Yankovic, Skelly, and White. What Nasbit is doing is not forecasting trends, but making them. We have seen how the industrial base of the United States has been destroyed, starting with the steel industry. In 1982, I wrote a work I called Death of the Steel Industry, in which I stated that by the mid-1990s, steel production in the United States will have declined to a point of no return, and that the auto and housing industry would go the same way. Well, of course it would, for sure. The steel production in the United States would have enormous impact upon the auto industry because the cars are made out of steel. Now, the housing industry is a different ballgame. I don't know how that connects. That's just my point. All this has come to pass, and what we are witnessing today is not an economic recession due not only to unsound economic policies, but the deliberately planned destruction of our industrial base, and along with the destruction of America's unique middle class, the backbone of the country, which depends on a progressive industrial expansion for growth and for steady employment. This is one of the reasons why the recession, which started in earnest in January 1991, has turned into a depression, in which the United States, as we know it, in 1970s and 1960s and 70s, will most probably never reappear. The economy will not come out of the depression of 1991 until it lasts at least 1995 to 96, at which time the United States will have become an entirely different society from the one it went through when the recession began. Opinion makers have played no small part in this war in the United States. We need to examine the role of the Committee of 300 in bringing about these far-reaching changes and how the social engineers have used central systems analysis to keep public opinion from expressing anything other than the politics of the invisible government. Where did it all begin? Documents covering the First World War that I was able to gather and examine the War Office in Whitehall, London. It appears that Royal Institute for International Affairs was commissioned by the Committee of 300 to do a study of manipulating war information. This task was given to Lord Northcliffe, Lord Rockmere, and Arnold Toynbee, who was MI6 agents at the RIAA. Lord Rockmere's family owned a newspaper which was used to support various government positions, so it's thought that the paper could change public perceptions, especially among the ranks of growing oppositions to the war. The project was housed in Wellington House, named after the Duke of Wellesley. American specialists drafted to help Lord Rockmere and Northcliffe included Edward Menezes and Walter Lippmann. These were traitors, folks. The group held brainstorming sessions to work out techniques for mobilizing mass support for the war, especially among the working class people whose sons were expected to go to the slaughter fields of Flanders in record numbers. Yes, they do this. They don't care. They just don't care. It's all about money and greed. Using Lord Rockmere's newspaper, new manipulative techniques were tried out, and after a period of about 6 months, it was apparent that they were a success. What the researchers discovered was that the only very small group of people understood the process of reasoning and the ability to observe the problem as opposed to passing opinion on it. This, said Lord Rockmere, was the way in which 87% of the British public approached the war, and that the same principle applied not only to the war, but to every conceivable problem in society in general. And with that, I'm going to stop here, folks. It's over. It's probably been an hour, and I'm pretty beat. So I hope that you enjoyed the program. What I'm sharing with you, again, this is from Dr. John Coleman. He wrote this book many years ago. It's still important, very important that you know these things. Even though probably most of these people are dead and gone, a lot of them are. Some of them are still alive, and different people have been taking over. So we're going to end the broadcast tonight. Wish you a good evening. Take care and have a good night.